Disney is going woke and going broke once again. The film production juggernaut refused to learn from the mistakes of the film Bud Light and Nike, pushing ahead with their hyper-woke remake of the Disney classic Snow White.
Once upon a time, Disney could do no wrong. The studio built its empire on magical kingdoms, charming princesses, and stories that shaped childhoods. But fast forward to 2025, and that story has taken a strange twist. The long-awaited live-action Snow White remake hasn't just underperformed, it's become a full-blown disaster. Critics are calling it one of Disney's most embarrassing flops in years, and audiences aren't holding back either. Meanwhile, in a plot twist no one saw coming, a different remake is quietly turning the tide. Lilo and Stitch, the Hawaiian sci-fi story about a lonely girl and her blue alien dog, is gaining momentum, positive buzz, and, perhaps most surprising of all, respect from fans who've been burned by Disney too many times before. So how did this happen? Why did Snow White, a cornerstone of Disney's legacy, fall apart so spectacularly? And how did a quirky underdog story like Lilo and Stitch manage to do what Snow White couldn't? The answers say more about Disney's identity crisis than you might think. This is the story of two remakes, one sinking under the weight of controversy, the other quietly rising from the ashes. When Disney first announced a live-action remake of Snow White, people expected a fairy tale update, but they didn't expect this. From the start, the project was steeped in controversy. Rachel Zegler, cast in the title role, became the face of that controversy almost overnight. Zegler repeatedly distanced herself from the original film in interviews. She said the remake would be a modern take where Snow White wouldn't be saved by the prince, wouldn't be dreaming about true love, and would instead be a leader with a strong voice. On paper, that might sound empowering. In practice, it came off as dismissive and even hostile to the original story that made the character iconic in the first place. Zegler's comments sparked backlash almost immediately. Critics said she was condescending, acting as if the 1937 film had nothing of value. Fans felt insulted. The perception wasn't just that Disney was reimagining a fairy tale, it was that they were ashamed of it. Then came the dwarfs, or rather, the lack of them. Disney replaced the 7 dwarfs with a group of diverse magical creatures in an effort to avoid stereotypes. But instead of applause, the move prompted mockery. Even Peter Dinklage, one of the most prominent actors with dwarfism, criticized the film, saying it perpetuated other kinds of backward thinking while pretending to be progressive. So Disney, in trying to avoid one controversy, created a brand new one. The worst part? All of this happened before the movie even hit theaters. The numbers paint a bleak picture. With a reported budget of nearly $270 million, Snow White became one of Disney's most expensive projects ever. But as controversy piled up, confidence plummeted. Release dates were pushed back. Reshoots were ordered. Marketing slowed to a crawl. It almost felt like Disney was trying to bury the film before it saw the light of day. And then there's the online sentiment. Instead of excitement, the film became a meme, shorthand for everything people dislike about modern Disney. Woke Snow White trended for all the wrong reasons. Hashtags like "Not My Snow White" and "Mom Go Broke" started showing up. Even neutral moviegoers started asking, if Disney doesn't respect its own classics, why should the audience? The tipping point came when advanced screenings failed to generate buzz. Early test audiences described the film as awkward, soulless, and confused. Rather than feel like a fresh take, the movie reportedly felt like it was trying, too hard to be something else, something it never needed to be. No one was happy. Traditionalists hated the changes. Progressives didn't find it particularly groundbreaking. The film alienated everyone it was trying to win over. While Snow White was self-destructing in slow motion, another project quietly began gaining traction. Lilo and Stitch, a 2002 animated cult classic, wasn't the obvious choice for a live-action remake. It doesn't have royalty, a big musical number, or fairy tale branding. but it does have something that audiences are craving: heart. Set in Hawaii, the story follows Lilo, a lonely girl coping with loss, and Stitch, a chaotic alien experiment, who learns what it means to be part of a family. It's weird, emotional, and deeply human. When the live-action version was announced, there was skepticism. But Disney made a surprising choice. They kept it small. The budget is significantly lower than Snow White. The cast is mostly unknowns. There's little media fanfare, and maybe that's exactly why it's working. The early leaks from the Lilo and Stitch set show a production that's staying faithful to the original without pandering. Fans noticed. There were initial concerns over casting, particularly with Lilo's sister Nani, played by Sydney Agudong. Some fans felt she didn't resemble the animated character, sparking debates over colorism and representation. But instead of doubling down or lashing out, Disney responded by focusing on the story's emotional core. They leaned into the ohana message, the idea that family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten, and that struck a chord. Slowly, fans' sentiment started to shift. People began saying, "Okay, maybe this one will be different." What's playing out here isn't just about two films. It's about a studio that's trying to redefine itself in an era that doesn't tolerate mistakes. Disney has been trying to modernize its stories, but somewhere along the way, it lost its touch. In trying to appeal to everyone, it ended up satisfying no one. Snow White represents that confusion. It's a remake that seems embarrassed by its roots, fronted by a lead actress who appears to resent the very role she was hired to play. Compare that to Lilo and Stitch, which embraces its weirdness, honors its emotional legacy, and doesn't try to apologize for what it is. The contrast couldn't be clearer. One film tried to lecture its audience, the other tried to connect with them. In today's media climate, audiences are savvy. They can smell inauthenticity from a mile away. They don't want to be preached to. They want to feel something real. Disney is at a crossroads. The last few years have not been kind to the Mouse House. From lukewarm Marvel sequels to underwhelming Star Wars spin-offs, the studio's once unshakable grip on pop culture is slipping. And Snow White might be the tipping point, the moment audiences say, enough. If Lilo and Stitch ends up being the surprise hit many think it could be, it won't just be a box office story. It'll be a referendum on Disney's creative direction. Audiences are voting with their wallets, and what they're saying is clear. They want heart, not lectures. Emotion, not agendas. Storytelling, not slogans. That doesn't mean audiences don't care about progress or representation. They do, but it has to feel authentic. It has to feel earned. And most of all, it has to feel like it comes from a place of love, not obligation. So, here we are. One remake burning under the spotlight of its own ambition, the other quietly reminding us why we love Disney in the first place. Maybe it's time for Disney to stop trying to rewrite its legacy and start remembering what made it magical in the first place. Because when a blue alien from space can teach us more about love, loss, and loyalty than a billion-dollar princess reboot, that's not just irony, that's a wake-up call.